Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, I have more to say about last week's hearing on the Twitter files, which was conducted by the House Judiciary Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Now that I've had a few days to process it, I'm even more astonished by the behavior of congressional Democrats toward independent journalists Matt Taibbi and Michael Shellenberger, who had the opportunity to present their findings, which comprise the Twitter files, to Congress. Now, the Twitter files show that multiple arms of the federal government, including the FBI, the CDC, the State Department, the White House, under both Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden, to be clear, pressured social media companies to restrict speech. Now, this is of grave concern to Republican lawmakers. It was Representative Jim Jordan who invited Taibbi and Shellenberger to attend the hearing. Since government action is at the core of the insidious push for censorship, an insidious push that has also affected Facebook, as my own reporting has shown, it is appropriate for Congress to probe and hopefully sharply limit the federal bureaucracy's ability to shape the rules of online discourse. Frustratingly, the Democrats who participated in the hearing on Thursday could not have cared less about the federal government's role in promoting social media censorship. Indeed, the Democratic representatives involved in the proceedings turned their fire on Taibbi and on Shellenberger, not bothering to hold back their disdain for the pair. Delegate Stacey Plaskett of the Virgin Islands got the ball rolling by referring to Taibbi and Shellenberger as, quote, so-called journalists. Let's watch.
This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter.
Taibbi responded by pointing out that he has won multiple journalism awards, including the National Magazine Award. Then Representative Sylvia Garcia, a Democrat from Texas, seized upon the idea that perhaps the pair, she actually referred to them as part of a threesome with journalist Bari Weiss, which prompted a lot of laughs, had perhaps been paid to provide such testimony. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz took this ball and ran with it, ludicrously suggesting that somehow Taibbi's reporting was suspect because he had grown his own Twitter and Substack followings because of it. She really seemed to think it was unethical for good journalism to reap financial rewards for the author. Watch this.
Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release of the emails in August of last year, you had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files, your followers doubled, and now it's 3 times what it was last August. I imagine your Substack readership, which is a subscription, increased significantly because of the work that you did for Elon Musk.
But it wasn't just tone-deaf personal attacks. The Democrats also expressed a profound disinterest in social media censorship as a topic, bordering on furtive support for it. Representative Dan Goldman asserted that the Twitter files had not produced a single genuine example of government censoring lawful speech.
Even with Twitter, you cannot find actual evidence of any direct government censorship of any lawful speech. And when I say lawful, I mean non-criminal speech, because plenty of speech is non-criminal.
At that point, Jim Jordan cut in and provided just such an example, the White House flagging a tweet from Robert Kennedy Jr. about vaccines for deletion. Goldman troublingly suggested, without actually reading the tweet in question, that perhaps that wasn't lawful, the speech in question. Representative Colin Allred, another Texas Democrat, similarly implied that there might be justification for censorship in the name of preventing hate speech. Now, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media companies are, of course, free to implement policies designed to curb harassment and hateful conduct. The question is whether a vast and self-serving federal bureaucracy that intervenes incessantly to limit speech it disfavors has effectively violated the First Amendment. Now, Taibbi and Shellenberger clashed repeatedly with members of Congress over the nature of misinformation and disinformation. Representative Stephen Lynch thought he'd scored a hit when he prompted Shellenberger to concede that the release of Hillary Clinton's emails and the widespread distribution of them on social media was the result of a successful hacking operation. But as Taibbi swiftly pointed out, just because the information was illicitly or illegally obtained does not make it misinformation. The content of the emails was authentic. And this is the main problem. Too many Democrats, national security experts, and mainstream journalists have found themselves in the position of implicitly arguing that various tweets could be spreading disinformation and thus undermining American democracy, even if the speech contained therein is truthful. Indeed, the entire countering disinformation industry is operating off a largely false assumption that the Russian influence on social media corrupted the 2016 election and led to Trump's victory. It's just not true, though. Russian activity on Facebook in the 2016 election was so much weaker and more inconsequential than people have been led to believe. A study by New York University's Center for Social Media and Policy found no evidence of a meaningful relationship between exposure to the Russian foreign influence campaign and changes in attitudes, polarization, or voting behavior. Moreover, alleged Russian bots flagged by disinformation tracking groups frequently turn out to be not bots, but real people, Americans even. Yet the disinfo industry is awash in public funding. The State Department has backed a British nonprofit that discourages advertisers from working with risky U.S. news websites, including Reason, the magazine I help edit. This is the danger of the U.S. government's ham-fisted, constitutionally suspect effort to curb disfavored speech. It is disappointing that congressional Democrats are taking little interest in the weaponization of the federal government against American speech rights. On the contrary, they think the weapon needs sharpening. It was one of the most baffling hearings I've ever watched, Batya. I was frankly disgusted by how the Democrats treated Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, just like on a kind of personal respect level. And then they totally misread the situation. They didn't understand it at all. They did not understand the thrust of why this was concerning. They weren't concerned by it. In fact, they think, what I gather from listening to their questioning is that they support what the CDC, the FBI, the State Department, the White House, and other agencies have done. They want more of it done. In fact, Representative Thomas Massie said on Twitter today that he was in a call with other members of Congress about the bank situation, the Silicon Valley Bank, and some Democrats said, well, do we have a law? Do we have a way to prevent misinfo about banking stuff from spreading on social media and causing a bank run, as if like that would be a legitimate use of government power to pressure social media companies. Anyway, Democrats have totally bought into the idea that it is necessary and good and right for the government to dictate to social media what its censorship policies should be, and it is alarming to me.
That hearing was chilling. I mean, it was a clown show, but it was a terrifying clown show, as all clown shows are, because clowns are terrifying.
As all clown shows are, yes.
But it was absolutely horrific. I mean, I've said here before, I think we probably agree on this. Matt Taibbi is the greatest journalist of, the generation, right above us, the Gen Z journalist generation, the Gen X journalist generation. There is nobody who holds a candle to him in terms of language and wit and reporting and honesty. And, it was horrific to see these people treat him with, just such outward disdain because they did not like what he had reported, not a single legitimate complaint from any of them. And then to see them trying to get him to reveal his sources, it really was, they clearly decided he was on the other team and treated him as such. And it was just chilling. I mean, yes. I couldn't look away. I was trying to go back and forth between that hearing and the Norfolk Southern hearing, which was difficult because they were scheduled at the same time. But it was very difficult to look away just because it was, when Jim Jordan is the voice of reason, that you've really, really messed up, right? And I just, I urge people, especially people who see themselves as on the left, to watch this hearing and see if, you can identify with these people. And the worst part, Robby, was to see all of the Yas Queen to Debbie Wasserman Schultz on Twitter from these these media characters in the liberal mainstream media, just to see her attacking, just baselessly trying to character assassinate somebody. I'll just end with this, which is Matt Taibbi on his podcast talking about the episode. He said that, he was like, I was pretty wild in my 20s. I was sure they were going to hit me with some really bad stuff I had done. I was nervous. I couldn't sleep the night before. I was preparing to address address all of these real concerns. And instead I got hit with just this like nonsense, just he called it Blackadder Congress version, So I think he was dismayed, but of course he's taking it in good humor. But it was really appalling and really worth watching. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, I urge people to watch the clips of it. And you and Brianna did a great job covering this last week.
Censorship should not be a partisan cause, should not be something that only one party is fired up about. And in other contexts, Democrats purport at least to care about free speech. There's been a lot of criticism of DeSantis's policies in Florida. A lot of Democrats expressing concern that the ends of the education policies will be teachers or schools pulling back the books they have available. And so I'm thinking, okay, so you understand intuitively that government action could influence this domain, right? The free speech domain, but you're just totally unwilling to apply it in the social media context, even though it's transparently obvious that's what's happening. Anyway, that's my radar for the day. We'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.